Charley Musselwhite, my pleasure to welcome you to Noise 11 and in coming months also to Australia. Good to have you back down here.
I'm looking for it big time. It's one of my favorite places in the world.
How many times have you toured Australia?
Gosh, I don't know. I think the first time might have been in the early 90s. I don't remember. It's been a lot of times. And I have a lot of good friends there. Anxious to see everybody.
Yeah, played many, many shows. Well, you've actually been on tour at the moment, most recently with Elvin Bishop. How far back do you two go together?
Oh, in the early 60s in Chicago, we met.
Wow.
But we didn't start working together probably until sometime in the 90s.
As your album together, 100 Years of Blues, suggests, I'm glad to see that you haven't been playing together for 100 years. It just feels like you've known each other for that long.
Well, it feels like 100 years.
You also had that great collaboration with Ben Harper, a couple of albums with Ben Harper. When you actually have a collaboration album, how does the mindset change for you in the studio as compared to just going in and making a Charley Musselwhite album?
Well, in some ways, it's more fun because I just get to be a harmonica player. And I just like to see what I can add to what's happening and in a good way. It's fun. It's a challenge to me, especially if it's a different style of music. Like with Cindy Lauper, it was certainly a different style. A lot of fun.
You've had some great collaborations over the years, haven't you? Including Australia's INXS.
Yeah, it was quite a deal. I went down to the studio and I didn't really know who they were. But they're awfully nice, and we've been friends since. And I think I recorded at least 2 tunes for them that day.
Well, one was the big hit Suicide Blonde.
Yeah, that was, people still ask me about that.
Well, particularly down in Australia, I guess, because, it's a very big hit and they're still a very big band down here.
Well, it was a big hit all over the world. People are everywhere ask me about it.
Mississippi Sun was the most recent album that you did. And you're quite a prolific recording artist over the last 50 plus years. Mississippi Sun, is that the last album you will do, or are there a lot more to come? What are your plans?
Well, I have one in the can, as they say, and we're just looking for a label for it right now.
Wow. With all of those albums that you have, that's, like there's dozens of albums, hundreds of songs, and then you have to condense that down into one show. How do you do that?
Just, figured how many minutes we got to play and figured how many tunes it'll take and I pick the ones I like to do the best and put them in there.
The show is always varying, though. There's no set list, is there?
It's always a different. I always make a list, but sometimes it changes, and I like to have a list in case I have a blank. I can. Oh, okay, let's do this too. You never know. It's good to have a list, though.
Yeah. What
it's
about
always? I write a different list for every show.
So that means that every show is a unique experience for the fan that comes along.
Well, even if it was the same set, we don't play the songs the same every time. The solos are different, and the length of the song might be different, and different solos come in different places. We don't have. I know some guys. If you hear them do a song, anytime you hear them doing it, it's going to be exactly the same, note for note. We're not like that. There's a lot of improvising going on.
Well, I guess that's like an Eagles show, isn't it? Not only do the Eagles play exactly the same song in exactly the same order, but it's also exactly the same banter between the songs.
Oh, well, good for them.
It's like going to the Sound of Music. It's like a musical. You know what the next word is always going to be.
Well, it's playing it safe.
What about that very first album, Stand Back? That was a long, long time ago. How often do you go back and revisit that album. And do you play much off that album anymore?
Yeah, I do some tunes from that album. In fact, one of the tunes from that album I've re-recorded for this new album that's in the can.
Oh, wow. Which one?
Uh, Maybe Will You Please Help Me?
Mm-hmm.
But there's another tune called Strange Land. I've been doing that a lot lately. For the last maybe 10 years, I've been doing that a lot.
Incredible album when that came out, I think 1968, but wasn't the first time you were in the recording studio, wasn't it? And you talked about the fun of, being in the studio with someone else and just being the harmonica player. What about when you were just the harmonica player on that John Hammond album that time?
Which one? I'm on several of his albums.
Well, I think dating back to 1965, wasn't it? So Many Roads might have been the first one.
Oh yeah, that was really something. That was the band, which became later called the band. At the time, it was called the Hawks, with Robbie Robertson and Levon Helm and all those guys. And it was Ronnie Hawkins' band. And John Hammond had heard them up in Toronto and brought them to New York to record Backing Him Up. And me and Mike Broomfield had gone to New York just to hang out. Every now and then we'd go to New York to check out the scene. And we'd always call John, and he said, "Come on down, I'm recording." So we went to the studio, and Bob Dylan was there hanging out. And Mike Broomfield played piano on that session. Once he heard Jimmy Robertson, he switched right over to piano. It was a lot of fun.
So Dylan, just hanging out. It's hard to imagine Bob doing something like that these days. He's now revered as this sort of godlike character, isn't he? But for those who know him as you do, apparently he's just a very normal, pretty funny guy.
None of us are normal. Hey, he was more of a folk singer back then, and we'd often see him at parties and jam sessions and things, and we'd hang out together. And so it wasn't unusual for him to be at the studio.
You must have crossed paths with Elvis, I would imagine, over your years.
When I lived in Memphis, I had Elvis's phone number, and I could call him up and find out. He never answered the phone when I called, but usually a girl would answer, and I'd ask her where the party was going to be, because he would rent places all around Memphis and have parties from midnight till dawn. He'd rent a theater have a lot of the latest movies, or he'd rent a skating rink and people would just skate all night. Or sometimes he'd rent the entire Memphis fairgrounds, and all the rides would be free, and Cokes and hot dogs and hamburgers were free, and just roam around the fairgrounds riding all the different rides. And I'd see him, I'd speak to him, but I never really had a conversation with him. I didn't play harmonica for him. He didn't know I played harmonica. I should have, but I didn't. I missed an opportunity there.
Yeah, there was so much history in the making at that point, like doing these things with Elvis, having Dylan sitting there in the room. Was there any sense of what this was to become at that point, or were you just living each day? Was that just, how you rolled?
Kind of a little bit of both. I mean, I think we all knew it was a special time, and we loved this music, and it was great that we were being able to record it and play it, and we were doing it. And we didn't. I remember Mike Bloomfield saying, "Man, we're going to be in history books someday." He was right, but at that age, we were so young, it was hard to picture how it was going to turn out, and but it was exciting, and it still is.
Tell me if this is true or false, Charley. Is it true that you were the inspiration for Dan Aykroyd's character Elwood Blues in the Blues Brothers?
Oh yeah, he's told me that several times, and I've seen it in print when he's done interviews. There was a club in, I think, Kingston, Canada, I used to play often, called Le Hibou, which means the owl in French. And Danny was a college student, and he was hanging out in that club, and I would come to play there, and he'd see me, and I didn't wear a hat, and I didn't have handcuffs on my harmonica case, but I did have my hair slicked back and wore shades and a black suit, and he kind of got that look from me from back then.
Because the Blues Brothers was Chicago blues, like you're associated with Chicago blues. Explain to me the difference between Chicago blues and blues in general.
Well, it's more like the blues of Mississippi. I mean, a guy like Muddy was playing just down the road from here from where I live, playing an acoustic guitar. But he went to Chicago and got an amplifier and plugged it in, started playing Mississippi blues, but electric. That's kind of like to me, the simple answer of what Chicago blues is the country blues went to town and it became electric.
That's brilliant. I've never heard anyone actually explain it so condensed.
Take my word for
it. One of the things that we saw you in recently, Killers of the Flower Moon, playing the part of Alvin Reynolds.
Yeah.
Charley the actor, have you done much acting roles over the years?
Yeah, I've been in a couple of biker movies and a horror movie and a few other movies. Most of them pretty low budget. This was the first major real movie I've been in. And the thing that's interesting, a lot of people don't know, if you read the book, there's a photo in that book of an outlaw named Al Spencer. And I have Al Spencer's rifle. And it's got notches carved in it from the people he killed and has his name carved in it. The reason I have it is because he died in a shootout with my grandfather. And my grandfather also was Charley Musselwhite. So I told Scorsese about that, and he thought it was pretty far out because he was filming everything right where it all happened. And here comes Charley Musselwhite back on the scene. Although he's not in the book or the movie, I just know it because he told me, and I have his rifle.
Wow, that would have been an amazing character to write into that movie at that point.
Yeah, it was amazing to have that connection. It's after that, Scorsese said, "Now I'm using a lot of the local Indian families around here. They're descendants of the actual people in the movie, in the story." He said, like the Denoria family. And I said, "Marty, my Aunt Mary Denoria is buried just down the road here in Pawhuska, Oklahoma." He thought it was another magical kind of thing that I was there and had those connections. I thought it was kind of interesting too.
How is Martin Scorsese to work with as a director? Does he make you feel nervous when you're being filmed, or does he put you at ease?
No, he was a delightful fellow. I mean, really easy to talk to. He laughs real easy. His instructions to me were just to, speak my lines like I wanted to, and change them if I wanted to, and to feel free to improvise. And I thought, well, I'm glad you're telling me that now because I already rewrote the script and how I'd like to say it. I didn't ask anybody if that was okay, but when I first got the script, I thought, gosh, I don't even talk like that. It'll be a lot easier for me to memorize my lines if I rewrite them. So I did that. And then when he told me to feel free to improvise, I thought, I know what I'm going to do. At the end, I threw in, I ain't lying.
It's such an intense movie to watch. I watched that, and I'm horrified at many of the scenes in that movie, and the fact that that really happened in history. But when you're in there and you're filming, do you have a sense of the storyline as you're there with the cameras in front of you, or does it feel like a day at work?
Well, it's pretty much a day at work. I mean, I'd read the book and I knew the story, and I remember my grandfather talking about those days, although I don't know if he didn't know or he didn't mention these murders. I never heard about the murders, uh, but you don't have time to think about all that other stuff when the camera's going and there's all these people looking at you, filming your scene. You got to focus on what you're doing.
One of the incredible things with that movie was the soundtrack, Robbie Robertson's final work, which is absolutely beautiful through the entire movie. And he worked with Scorsese on many, many projects over the years. Was Robbie involved while you were involved with the movie? Was he around at that time?
He wasn't there on the set. I mean, I don't think he was there for any of it. He just did the music. I mean, I didn't see him. Well, of course, I didn't see De Niro either.
Really?
Or DiCaprio. I just came in for that one day, and me and Jesse Plemons, who's in the scene with me, he and I had trailers next to each other, and he's the only actor really. And I saw some other people I recognized. I don't know who they were, but I was just in town and out. I wasn't there for the whole movie.
We will be seeing you in Australia in September, and we have to ask, is it the last time we will be seeing you in Australia? Because, we've just had James Taylor's come through. He's much younger than you, and he's, announced his farewell tour. But we've also got Engelbert Humperdinck coming through in coming weeks, who is 88 years old, and he's not ruling out coming back. So where do you sit in retirement?
I hadn't really thought about it a whole lot. I'm kind of enjoying what I'm doing, and I'd love to come back to Australia. We've always loved Australia. Never had a problem there. It's always been a great time, great people, and great audiences, and it's just a beautiful place to come, and we're looking forward to it.
We're looking forward to seeing you back down here too, Charley, and thank you for joining us here today at Noise 11. I've loved the stories.
Well, thank you for having me, and I'm glad I got it working on my iPhone.